Good morning everyone. This is class 6, subject Social Science, chapter number 10 of History, and the name of the chapter is Traders, Kings and Pilgrims. As we have already covered all the topics from this chapter, so today this is going to be our summary lecture. It's our third lecture and it's going to be summary lecture, in which we'll summarize all the topics covered in lecture number 1 and 2. So we'll recapitulate all the topics. The topics that will recapitulate are trade and traders, trade route, then kingdom along the coast, Satavahanas, story of silk and silk route, Kushanas, spread of Buddhism at the time of Kanishk, the famous ruler of Kushanas, pilgrims and bhakti. At last you will be getting one assignment on the basis of all the topics covered in the chapter. So let's start the topics one by one. And listen very carefully. This is summary lecture. If anything that was left during the lecture number 1 and 2, that you can understand now. Trade and traders means, what does trade means and trader means? So firstly, traders are the people who bring the things from the place where they are made and they sell them elsewhere or any other place for getting profit. This is known as a person known as trader. Or during the past time also, the traders, they were present there in the society, and the people who were bringing the different things from the places where they were made and they sold them to the other places for getting profit. The evidences of that trade that the traders were doing, they were got by the archaeologists or historians. That we have already covered. Again we will discuss which evidences the archaeologists they got about the trade and traders and different trade routes even. Route means the path that they were using for moving from one place to another. Now trade. Trade is a basic economic concept involving the buying and selling of goods. So the activity in which the buying and selling of the goods that is done, it is known as trade. So these are the meanings of trade and traders. Now, to find out about trade and trade routes, historians got some evidences, some clues you can say, how they came to know that during that particular time, near about 2200 or 2000 years ago, the people they were involved in the trade activities. So the clues or the evidences that they got, they collected information about northern black polished ware. Northern black polished ware, that was the type of a pottery, the fine pottery that was found. So they got that particular pot in the different places of Indian subcontinent, and archaeologists they came to know that might be these objects were carried from one place to another by the traders. So they collected information about northern black polished ware that was found in different places. Then second, historians told that South India was famous for gold, spices, especially black pepper, and black pepper was highly valued in Roman Empire during that particular time. And how they came to know the trade that was going on between Roman Empire and Indian subcontinent, because the black pepper that was famous there in the Roman Empire, and it was even known as the gold, the black gold there, and Roman coins were found there in southern part of India. So that was the clue. Next, historians found evidences of trade in Sangam poems also. The Sangam poems, as we already discussed, the written work in Tamil that was found. So in those Sangam poems, the different clues of trade that were found. The next is about the route. Traders explored, or traders searched out, the traders were using several sea routes, means they were adopting the sea routes for going from one place to another, and those routes they were followed the sea coast, means they were just near to the sea coast areas. Okay, so this is all about the traders and trade route that evidences historians found. Clear about that? Now, the next is kingdoms along the coast. Here we are talking about the southern part of India. It has the long coastal line that we can see in the map also, that the long coastline it is here. So what were the major kingdoms that were flourished during that particular time? Kingdoms along the coast, they were the southern half of the subcontinent marked with long coastline, plateaus and river valleys. So the different landforms, means the coastal area it was there, plateaus were there, different rivers are there like Kaveri, Mahanadi, Godavari, Krishna. Okay, so river valleys are also present there. So this is the complete landforms that were found there and that are present here. So what were the kingdoms there? Well, that we discussed, and the famous areas like Kaveri river valley is most fertile river valley there in southern part, and all the kingdoms that we talk about here like Cholas, Cheras, Pandyas, they all wanted to have control on that fertile area because it was very beneficial for them for agriculture. Then one more thing, they wanted to control the Kaveri river valley, that is again it is repeated. So that was we already discussed. And the second thing, they had the different coastline expeditions also, because they wanted to cover the coastal areas so that they could get the benefit from traders as taxes and tributes. Now we'll discuss again about the Movenders. Movender. Who were these Movender and what does it mean? Sangam poems mentioned Movender word, which is Tamil word. Its meaning is three chiefs, or that is used for the heads of three ruling families in southern part. Let's see which are these three ruling families. It was used for three ruling families in south. They were Cholas, Chera and Pandyas. In southern part, the three kingdoms or three ruling families, those were famous during that time, they were Cholas, Cheras and Pandyas. These three ruling families were known as Movender. Now, they became powerful in South India around 2300 years ago. So, what was the time period to flourish these three kingdoms? That was near about 2300 years ago. They were powerful kingdoms there in South India. Okay, these three families had three centers of power. Three means the not three. There must be two centers. Here 3 plus 3 should be, means altogether 6 centers were there of their power. How? The three ruling families, they are and all three they were having two main centers, like one was inland and one was the coastal line. The one city or one part to one center they were having on the coastal areas. Okay, so all together 6 main centers were there, where those they were having the main administration from those centers basically. So how out of all those 6, 2 were very much famous. Out of all 6 centers, 2 were very important. They were Puhar and Madurai. Puhar, it was known as Kaveripatnam also, and Madurai. So these 2 centers were very much popular. Now Puhar or Kaveripatnam was a port city of the Cholas, and Madurai was the capital of Pandyas. Clear? These 2 centers were important during that time out of all 6. Now Muendas received gift from the people instead of regular taxes. Means, if you remember, we have done in the Mauryan Empire that officials were there to collect the taxes. Means the taxes were collected from the people in the kingdom. But here what is given? That Muendas they were not getting the taxes from the people. They were receiving different type of gifts from the people. Means regular taxes were not there. Clear? Next thing, military expedition were organized by these 3 chiefs along the coast. As this we have already discussed, that they had the military campaigns or military expedition along the coastal area, so that they could control over that area and could get benefit from the taxes and tributes. Clear? Now the next kingdom that we had done in this chapter, that is Satavahanas. A dynasty known as Satavahanas developed in western part of India. Here developed and in both are written combined. It is developed and in separate. In western part of India, these Satavahanas, the most famous ruler of Satavahanas was Gautami Putra Sri Satkarni. So the most famous or most important ruler of Satavahanas, he was Gautami Putra Sri Satkarni, and his mother was Gautami Balashri. So from his mother he got the name Gautami Putra Sri Satkarni. Okay, and these all information the archaeologists or the historians they received from the inscriptions. Those were written on behalf of his mother Gautami Balashri. Clear? Now, rulers of Satavahanas were known as lords of Dakshin Patha. They were having the control on the different paths or the path towards the south direction. So that's why they were known as the lords of Dakshin Patha. Clear? This is all about Satavahanas, the famous ruler. It was developed there in the western part of India. Then they were known as the lords of Dakshin Patha. Now, the next topic is story of silk and silk route. Silk, as you all know, it is a type of fabric that we people use now also. How it developed, here we will talk about that, and how the different traders they were using that in trade, and the route they had adopted, it was known as the silk route. So let's see about the story of silk and silk route. Silk was highly valued fabric in most of the societies of that time. Means the people of high you can say the rich families or the ruler families, they were using this silk, this fabric silk. It was most valued fabric of that time. Next, raw silk was obtained from the cocoons of silkworm. If anyone asks you how the silk it is made, it is obtained from the silkworm. The silkworm they make cocoons, and from cocoons the thread is prepared, and from thread obviously the cloth, silk cloth that is prepared. This is the procedure basically. Now, where the technique of silk it was developed. Firstly, the technique of making silk were first invented there in China around 7,000 years ago, very long ago, but it was really the secret there with the Chinese only for many years, near about 2000 years ago, that silk that was introduced to other parts also. Like when you will read the chapter, you will see that near about 2000 years ago, the Chinese rulers they sent gift to the other rulers in West Asia. Okay, sometimes Chinese ruler or China rulers sent gifts of silk to rulers in Iran and West Asia, and from there the knowledge of silk it spread further west also. When you see the map, you can see that Iran and the West Asian part they are in the western direction of China. So from China the knowledge it spread to Iran and the West Asia, and from there in different other countries of the West. So this is all about the how the technique it really it developed there in China, and then how it spread in different other countries. Clear? Then that silk, the different traders, those were having the trade in silk, they were using different routes there through mountains or desert. It was really difficult basically, and on the way the people that were there or the emperors or the kings, even they were receiving different taxes from tributes from those traders. So the silk was costly because that cost was also added there. So here we can add some more points, like it was very costly. People living along the route often demanded payments for allowing the traders to pass through. For passing through the areas that the route they were using, the different people or the kings they were demanding different payments or different taxes and tributes, and they were definitely paying. And in return, even the different rulers they were protecting them from robbery also, from different robbers, as they were paying the taxes for going through. So obviously in return the kings they were protecting them from the robbers. Then some rulers they tried to control routes, these silk routes basically. This was because they could benefit from tributes and taxes that they were receiving from the traders. And out of all, the most important kingdom in our history, the best known rulers who controlled the silk route were the Kushanas. Clear? In the western part of India and the western Asian part, there these Kushanas they were developed. Okay, so this Kushanas, if we talk about, they had controlled most of the silk route and they got the benefit from the taxes and tributes. Now let's discuss again about the Kushanas. Kushanas ruled over Central Asia and Northwest India near about 2000 years ago. So this is the time period and the area where they had the control. Clear? Then the most famous ruler of Kushanas was Kanishk. Kanishk was the famous ruler of Kushanas. Then he ruled near about 1900 years ago there in that Kushanas kingdom. Peshawar and Mathura were the two centers or two most important centers of power for Kushanas. Means they had the control over the kingdom from these two main centers, Peshawar and Mathura. Clear? One more it was information we received that Takshila was also the part of Kushana's kingdom. Takshila, as we talked about earlier also, that is also the part of Kushana's kingdom. Clear? Next, about the spread of Buddhism during Kanishka time period. Kanishk, the famous ruler of Kushanas. How Buddhism that was developed during Kanishka's time period. Number 1. Kanishka organized Buddhist council where different matters were discussed by the scholars. The scholars or the learned people, they had discussed on different matters of Buddhism. They are in the council that was organized by Kanishka. First thing, how it was developed. Second, Ashwaghosh was the court poet of Kanishka's court who wrote the biography of Buddha named Buddha Charita. Ashwaghosh, who was the poet there in Kanishka's court, first thing, he was the court poet of Kanishk, and he wrote the biography of Buddha. Its name was Buddha Charita. Clear? So it is again one of the main fact that Buddhism developed during Kanishka time, because the court poet wrote the biography of Buddha. It means the people, they took interest in the life of Buddha, so that developed there. Next thing, new form of Buddhism was developed during that particular time of Kanishka. Okay, it was Mahayana Buddhism. Means Mahayana Buddhism is the name of new form of Buddhism. The older form of Buddhism was known as Theravada now. Okay, the older form that was present, it was known as Theravada. Clear? Now, this Mahayana Buddhism, the new form, that different changes were made there in the new form. Let's discuss about those changes. Changes in new form of Buddhism in Mahayana Buddhism, basically two changes, those were mentioned there. They were statues of Buddha were made now. Earlier the people, they just had the different signs of worshipping, like people tree, that was a symbol where Buddha got enlightenment. So different signs or sculptures the people were using. But now in Mahayana Buddhism, the statue of Buddha were made and they started worshipping that. Number 2, the second change was belief in Bodhisattvas. Bodhisattvas were basically the people who got enlightenment, or the heads of all those were following the Buddhism. So the people, they had the belief on these Bodhisattvas, and they taught the people in the societies there. They were living with the people only, and they taught the people. And due to that Bodhisattvas, they became very much popular in the societies, and they spread that Bodhisattvas, due to Bodhisattvas, the Buddhism that spread in different areas, like we have already talked about that. In the southern part, even the western part, if we talk about China, then Korea, Japan, in southern part in Sri Lanka, in eastern part if we talk about the Myanmar, Thailand, and the different parts of Indonesia also. So that Buddhism spread during that particular time. So this is how we can say that Buddhism developed during the time period of Kanishk. So Buddhism spread in Central Asia, China, and later on it spread there in eastwards, including Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Thailand, etc. That I already told you, and it was most important there in China. Clear about the development of Buddhism during Kanishka's time. Now, the next topic is pilgrim. Firstly, what does it mean? Pilgrims were the men and women who undertake journeys to holy places in order to offer worship to the deities or to the almighties. Okay, the people who undertake the journeys to the holy places for worshipping, they are known as pilgrims. Famous Chinese Buddhist pilgrims, here in the chapter we talk about them. The Chinese pilgrims who visited to learn about Buddha, and three are mentioned here. First is Fahian. He came about 1600 years ago there in India. Then Xuanzang, who visited India near about 1400 years ago, and just after 50 years after Xuanzang, I King came here near about 1350 years ago, means 1350 years ago. So these are the three pilgrims, Buddhist pilgrims, who came here for Buddha only. Now, what were the reasons for coming here? That we'll discuss here. The reasons for coming to India for the Chinese Buddhist pilgrims. First, they were very much interested in the life of Buddha. Second, they visited places associated with the life of Buddha because they wanted to know more and more about the life of Buddha. They also visited famous monasteries and had collected books and statues of Buddha. That books and statues they even carried back to China with them. So these are the reasons they came here in India. When they came here in India, Nalanda was a unique center of learning Buddhism. So they visited Nalanda also, and Nalanda at present it is in Bihar. According to Xuanzang, Xuanzang described Nalanda of that particular time. How he described that Nalanda was the unique center of learning Buddhism. When Chinese pilgrims visited the subcontinent, they also spent time studying Nalanda. Clear? Now Xuanzang described Nalanda as I told you that according to Xuanzang he described Nalanda that the teachers of Nalanda are the men of highest ability and talent. Means the people, the teachers there in Nalanda, they were highly talented teachers. And the rules of monastery, that was the learning center. So the Buddhist monastery, they were very much strict, and all have to follow all the rules. Those are present there according to Xuanzang. Then discussions are held throughout the day and all mutually help each other. So he is describing that whether old or the young people, they all held the discussion throughout the day and they all help each other in those discussions. The gatekeeper asked questions for entrance in Nalanda. Means the people who wanted to enter there in Nalanda, that is considered as the oldest university also. So the people who wanted to visit, they had to give answers for different questions of gatekeeper, and it is observed that it is described by Xuanzang, out of all if we consider out of 10, 7, 8 were not able to give the answers of those questions. So means difficult questions were asked there for entry. So this is how Xuanzang described Nalanda. Now people are allowed to enter after answering these questions that we all already discussed. Now the next topic is bhakti. Bhakti, that is a devotion of devotee towards deity. Devotion means that is the worship of devotee, the person who is worshipping, and deity means God, to whom the person devotee is worshipping. So bhakti comes from the Sanskrit term bhaj, meaning to divine or share. This suggests the two-way relationship between the deity or the devotee. Deity, as I told you, this is its meaning God, and devotee, the person who is worshipping. So that is the relationship between deity and devotee. So in simple words, how we can define? We can define bhakti as a person's devotion to deity or towards the God. The idea of bhakti, it is present in Bhagavad Gita, the sacred book of Hindus, and Bhagavad Gita, the part it is present there in Mahabharata. Deities who were worshipped through bhakti included Shiva, Vishnu, and goddess Durga. So these all features of bhakti, later on they became the main features of Hinduism, because in Hinduism we all know that the people, they worship the deities, clear, like God Shiva, Vishnu, Durga, Lakshmi. So all in Hinduism the bhakti that is present. So they became the features, main features of Hinduism also. Now, what was the reason that people attracted to bhakti during that particular time? Ordinary people attracted to bhakti because bhakti saints use the language of ordinary people. Means the sant or the saints, those were there in bhakti, they use the language of ordinary people so that they could understand it. Anyone, whether rich or poor, man or women, high or low caste people, could follow the path of bhakti. So it was easy for all to take part there in different events of bhakti, because earlier in Vedas, if we talk about, there the low caste people, women, they were not allowed, but here there is no discrimination on anyone. Number 3, this path emphasized devotion and individual worship of a god or goddesses rather than the performance of elaborate sacrifices. Earlier in different chapters we have done that sacrifices were performed there, but here the sacrifices, instead of any sacrifice, the individual worship of god and goddesses were there. There was no force on anyone. So that's why the people, they attracted towards the bhakti. Now at last we have done the elsewhere in which Christianity we have covered. Christianity emerged in West Asia about 2000 years ago, and Bethlehem was the part of Roman Empire where Jesus Christ was born, that we have already discussed. He taught the people that treat others with love and affection. Means when we give respect to others, in return the same we will get. So we should have the respect for others. Holy book of Christians is Bible, that contains the teachings of Jesus Christ, the God or Almighty of Christians. So this is all about all the topics that we have covered. Today we have recapitulated also. I hope that all these topics are clear to you now. Now the homework, that assignment is that first question it is match the following. So you'll match this in this question. Then second question it is name the rulers who controlled the Silk Route effectively. Which was the capital kingdom of Pandyas? Capital city, here it will come. Capital city of Pandyas kingdom. Then where was Jesus Christ born? Which port was under the Cholas? The port city that we have done, we'll write here. Then what is Buddhacharita? Which Kushana's ruler organized Buddhist council? Where can evidences of trade be found? The Sangam poems we have done, that you can write. Which is the oldest form of Buddhism? What was the most valued export commodity to the Roman Empire from India? Name the three chiefs mentioned in Sangam poem. Which form of Buddhism was popular in southeastern countries? Where the philosophy of Bodhisattvas was most popular? Then here the 14th is who were known as Lord of Dakshinpata. Then what makes silk highly valued fabric in most societies? Then who were the rulers who ruled over Central Asia and Northwest India around 2000 years ago? How did chiefs use the tribute that they collected from neighboring areas? As they were not collecting any tax, they were collecting the tributes. So they were using in different tasks, and they were the rest they were distributing among the relatives or the different people. Making silk is a complicated process. Why? The complete process you'll write here. From where a word Hindu derived? That is derived from Indus. Then last, who was Kanishk? So these questions you will attempt and revise the chapter for the test also. The homework solution now for lecture 2. What are the main features of bhakti? The main features of bhakti are: we can define bhakti as person's devotion to deity. The idea of bhakti is present in Bhagavad Gita. Deity who are worshipped through bhakti included Shiva, Vishnu and goddess Durga. Then discuss the reasons why Chinese pilgrims came to India. Number 1, they were very much interested in the life of Buddha. Number 2, they visited places associated with the life of Buddha so that they could get the knowledge about Buddha. Number 3, they also visited famous monasteries and collected books and statues of Buddha. Third question there was, write a short note on Nalanda. You'll write Nalanda as heading. Nalanda was a unique center of learning Buddhism. The teachers of Nalanda are the men of highest ability and talent, according to Xuanzang. The rules of monastery are very strict, and all they have to follow them. Discussions are held throughout the day, and all mutually help each other. Number 5, the gatekeeper asks questions for entrance in Nalanda. People are allowed to enter after answering those questions. So this in point you can write. Number 4, it is describe the new development and spread of Buddhism during Kanishka's period. Answer: spread of Buddhism during Kanishka's period. Kanishka organized Buddhist council for different matters. There it was discussed by scholars. Then second is Ashughosa was the court poet in Kanishka's court who wrote the biography of Buddha named Buddha Charita. So all the points that we discussed you'll write here in the development of Buddhism during Kanishka time. Clear? And the fifth question it was, why do you think that ordinary people attracted to bhakti as the bhakti saint use the language of ordinary people? Second, anyone, whether rich, poor, men, women, high, low caste, they could follow the path of bhakti, and this path emphasized or the lay stress on devotion and individual worship of a god and goddess rather than the performance of sacrifice. This was the solution for lecture number 2. I hope that the chapter is clear to you. Revise it for the test now. Thank you and have a nice day.